Hello everyone and a very warm welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you a game that's an old favourite of mine and which I've had the pleasure of owning for about 20 years now, although I've not had as many opportunities to play it as I would like. And I speak of Avalon Hill's classic naval war game, Jutland. This was designed by James Dunnigan back in the day, and it was first published by Avalon Hill in 1967, would you believe? Now, although my copy is a little bit dog-eared and very well loved, both by its previous owners as well as by me, evidently, I found it like this, honestly. Yeah, mine is in fact the 1970s reprint. I think they began reprinting these in 1974 and they carried on keeping them into production through the 70s and I think possibly into the early 80s, although I'm not too sure about that. But this was quite a remarkable game in its day, and it made James Dunnigan's name with Avalon Hill. It was the first game that he'd ever published with them. Of course, it's obviously a naval game, but for those of us who are used to more modern naval offerings, it may come across as a little bit unusual. Now, what do I mean by that? A lot of the concepts that appear in modern naval games owe their lineage, I'll say, to some of the ideas Dunnigan put forward in this game. But this game in itself was something new because it was a game without a board, very unusual for an Avalon Hill game back in the day. Its components, for all the game's apparent complexity, were really simple. And this was a complex battle. Most people, I imagine, when they, you know, embarked on the hobby of naval wargaming, you'd probably want to start with something a bit lighter than the Battle of Jutland. And I say that because for those I mean, most naval aficionados have heard of Jutland, but just in case any of you guys haven't heard of it, I'll just say it was a very large and very complex battle. And even if you do what Jim Dunnigan did in this design and offer a basic version that only includes the big battleships and the battle cruisers like Von der Tann here, you're still dealing with an awful lot of ships, and it's a complicated, it's one of those battles that's very difficult to refight in a sensible way because of the nature of the technology of the time, the sheer number of ships involved, and the great difficulty, as so often with naval war games and naval battles in real life, of forcing an opponent to accept a battle he may not necessarily want to fight. But anyway, enough mysterious preamble from me. I've been holding up this lovely Klausbergen painting for quite long enough. Shall we have a look at what's inside the box? So I must confess, when I bought this at a car boot fair 20 years ago, I'd never actually seen a component list for this game, so I didn't know what to expect. And the first thing I thought was, oh my word, I've been swindled. There's no game board in here because, I paid £10 for it, which is a miraculously low price even then. I thought, no board, what? No wonder it was only £10. And then when I started going through the rules, which are beautifully presented, I must say, I realised that this was actually a very interesting hybrid of a game. I'm just going to linger on the rule book for a bit because I love the aesthetics of the 70s. 70s rule books and early colour printing is great. So in keeping with Avalon Hill's habit at this time, there were different tiers of the game. There was a basic, there was an advanced, and there was a tournament set of rules. Now, very impressively, even allowing for the fact that elements of this game may not have aged well, by the time you get to the advanced game rules, and they dominate most of the page they're on, you're on page 5. And page 1 is in fact the cover of the rule book. So you're looking at, okay, allowing for moderately sized print, you're looking at less than 5 pages of basic rules. Now, for someone recreating the Battle of Jutland, that is impressive. I've got to push that straight out there. Hats off to you, Jim. Well done. The advanced game, of course, is slightly more lengthy. It introduces some new concepts. But even then, by the time you get to the tournament game, we've only hit page 10. And what the tournament game really does is it tidies up a lot of the shortcuts that James Dunnigan put in order to make the battle playable. So for those people who want a much more realistic search mechanism, additional forces, if you go on the assumption that Admiral Jellicoe decided to bring the pre-dreadnoughts to the party, as the Germans did, you get the stats for additional forces. You also get blank counters, so you can make those ships up. You can introduce submarines, zeppelins, all the other things that are not, are not present in the base game, because they just, he wants you to concentrate on the maneuvering of the battleships and the searching and the strategic deployments. Now, I'll skip to the back first, because that is the setup for a tactical battle. So this game, in the absence of a board, requires you to either have an extremely big table or a floor. And the reason you need a floor is because I don't know how visible they are on camera. I think it's coming through, but essentially you use the range ruler in order to create your hexagonal battle zone. And each 1,000 yards of range equates to roughly 1 inch. So you need a fairly big area. The game comes to help you achieve this with a set of battle area markers. So you place one of these in the middle of your table or your floor, and it's represented by that black square in the diagram. So big space needed. You're probably wondering why there are 4. Now, the answer to that is because depending on how psychopathic you are as an admiral, you could have your fleets within mutually supporting distance. And in this game, it doesn't happen very often, but it's possible. You can engineer, if you're both really up for it, multiple interceptions at the same time, sometimes in adjacent hexes. So, as I say, it's uncommon, but it's not totally unknown that you might have 2 enormous battles developing within steaming distance of each other. Hence why you'll need 2 of these to create 2 adjacent battle zones. Just how big are your houses? That's one thing that will, it's a consideration that will impose itself on any strategic considerations you have when you're plotting your move. So in addition to those, you've also got these really, really handy player aids. I love these. They're very word heavy. It's very much of its time, late 60s into the early 70s. But you have your tables, you have your very clearly written explanations of what they mean, and you've got them clearly marked for the basic game. That's all you need. The the advanced, or call it the more intermediate game. And just to keep things nice and historical, you also have this really handy player aid that shows you what the standard formation maneuvers were at the time and gives you a hint as to how you can move your ships on this vast area. It also includes nice bits of thematic chrome, like the famous German Gefechtskehrtwendung. I'm sorry if I've butchered that maneuver, the battle turn away. The British, of course, are not allowed to pull this maneuver, unfortunately. And both sides, of course, can do all these various permutations of divisional column into battle line, vice versa. For the more advanced rules, if players want to do a lot of recording, and you do need small handwriting for this, there is the time chart for the critical days of the battle from about end of 30th May through to the end of 2nd 2nd June, I believe. Oh no, to the end of the 1st of June. Fair enough. Some things modern, or people who are familiar with Avalon Hill's later stuff, and indeed other game companies, holding boxes for your various task forces. So this is the German one. You start the historical game with your fleet concentrated into a single task force. But if you want to play historically, you can split off the battle cruisers to send them ahead. If you want to go completely nuts, you can split your task forces into 6 or more groups. The sky's the limit, although Mr. Dunnigan sensibly recommends you keep your fleet concentrated. On the reverse, there's explanations of how to maneuver your ships, just in case you don't have easy access to the other player aid I showed you. The British have their equivalent with the names of the ships handily listed in their starting boxes. And another detail I like, note the difference on this help sheet. The Germans have had the battle turn away maneuver included. The British have not. Nice touch there, really nice touch for reinforcing the historic element of all this. And then, of course, there's the map. There's the strategic map. Now, this is a modern photocopy I made because I'm afraid, with the best will in the world, the 70s were a bit of a while ago. Believe me, I was there, I know. And my lovely old notepads with the British hit records and the German hit records and the maps are beginning to go a bit yellow, so they're probably not showing up so well on the camera. But if I show you this, this is the wonderfully simple map that both sides have so that they can plot their movements in advance. And then hopefully via the search phase eventually find one another. I mean, this seems quite uncluttered to me now because having been a wargamer for a few years, I've seen a few iterations of this kind of thing. But in the 60s, this was so cool. This was almost battleships par excellence. Look, you know, you've got gridded hexes and you call out searches. Isn't this amazing? So I had all of that. Now, in the basic game, damage is not tracked in written form. It's a very straightforward damage allocation system that allows battles to be resolved really quickly. But if you did want something a little bit more detailed, the intermediate game gives you these hit boxes for the ships. Now, these are tied directly to their armament. There is an additional tier of recording damage, but as a basic system goes, this functions very well. If you want that little bit more detail about ships, you know, slowly losing combat capability as they're damaged rather than just being hindered or sunk, this is where the fun is at. And the beauty of this system is that this sheet for both the British and the Germans can be played with the basic rules, sorry, not the basic rules, the advanced rules or the tournament rules, or both. It's the same basic structure, you just use it slightly differently. It's very, very clever. I mentioned opening the box and thinking, oh my word, I've been cheated, where's the map? There were components missing from my copy of the game, unfortunately. And rather crucially, these were the maneuver templates and the gunnery templates. So this is my Heath Robinson attempt at the time to create my own maneuvering gauge, which I found out later I'd recreated pretty accurately. Go me. Unfortunately, I was a little bit out with the gunnery equivalent. Now, this is really not going to show up in the light, but I'll do my best. So that's the, I got that. I have got that upside down. Clever, Andrew. So this was my stab at the gunnery ranging template. And I apparently added quite a bit more distance than I needed to, but I was guessing. I have retained these because trying to buy individual components of this game is nearly impossible these days, not unless you're willing to pay a phenomenal amount of money. But you may as well just buy the game, which would actually be a bit more affordable if you can find it on eBay. And also, while my unnecessarily long gunnery template has distorted the distance somewhat, it actually doesn't matter so much with this game, because I'm now going to move on to the jolly old warships, which are the real meat of the game. The scale to which these are drawn actually means that it does not matter that much as long as the same distances apply. Possibly I need a bigger living room, but you know, that's my problem. So the counters are gorgeous. As you can see, those of you who are familiar with Jane's fighting ships will recognize those very familiar top downs. Fairly minimal amount of information is printed on the ships, their name obviously, and stats for their basic protection rating, their speed and their gunnery. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, and also very nicely done because the Germans are highlighted in grey and the British are white, so they stand out very clearly on your floor. All the capital ships, as I say, have their own counter. Here are Beatty's battle cruisers, and here are Hipper's battle cruisers. And it's great. You just have these visually very appealing, and I do mean that. I know other games have come along that have produced beautiful artwork on their ship counters, eye-wateringly beautiful. But in 1967, this was pretty awesome, and I judge it on the standard of 1967. So you get a lovely, lovely ton of ships, but not too big a ton. See, again, this is really clever. Capital ships only makes this game a bit more manageable than it otherwise would be. If you are one of those masochists that wants to throw the light forces in as well, then as per the advanced and tournament rules, here is a bag of cruisers, and here is an even more dauntingly big bag of destroyers. Note they've put entire flotillas on one counter, which in the context of the rigid tactics of the First World War makes a lot of sense and helps keep the game manageable. So there we go. Those are all the components. Impressive, isn't it? This is a game about the Battle of Jutland. And I've opened my box and found a whole load of sheets, which are really just reprints of the same. A very straightforward and quite friendly rule book. Quite a few ships. Task force organizational boards, and my strategic maps were on the pads. The hit records and the maps, as I say, are double-sided. And in theory, I would have found these two. But, you know. So that is it. You have a splendid setup for a game modelling one of the most complicated naval battles in history, which at first glance seems quite an impressive achievement. I certainly thought so. But it does lead very nicely into the question of, well, okay, Andrew, this does look really pretty. Well, pretty. But how does it play? And that is a very excellent question, and it's one that I will be addressing in the next videos as I take us through the various components of the game and how they interact with one another strategically as well as tactically. Now, just to warn you all, I did briefly entertain the insane notion of setting up a full encounter, you know, big Jutland style. But I was playing around with camera angles and floor space and the fact that I have a cat. And it wasn't really working. So what I'm going to do instead is do a series of short vignette videos where I look at all the different elements of gameplay, and I will just set up different very compact scenarios that will actually fit on my dining table just to take you through all the different processes the game has to offer, and then we'll wrap up and discuss them. I'll do my obligatory final thoughts video, which is a hilarious title, I know, because most of the games I talk about, final thoughts is anything but. I always come back to them in the end. But what's a mind? Where would we be without mindless traditions? So yes, when I return, I will look first at how the all-important strategic system works, because while the bags of battleships are really cool and the tactical game is really cool, the real meat and the real thought resides on this critical piece of paper. So we will look forward to that. Thank you all very much for watching this video. As always, you guys, it's splendid to have your company. Always appreciate the chance to talk at you, but please do throw comments back my way. A big hello to all my long-suffering veterans, and to anyone who might be new to the channel, greetings. I hope you found this video interesting, and I hope that whether you're one of my regulars or someone who's just wandered in and thought, what the heck is this channel about? It'll be really nice to see you in the next part of this video series on Jim Dunnigan's very awesome game, Jutland. I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much. Bye.